The photograph arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Marcus Chen couldn't stop crying. After 40 years of chasing dreams in Hollywood, after the betrayals, the rejections, the quiet nights when he wondered if anyone would ever truly believe in him, here it was, proof that someone had. But the person who'd given him this gift wasn't a producer or a studio executive. She was a waitress who'd worked a double shift for minimum wage, while he sat in her restaurant, mocking her with laughter that echoed through the dining room like broken glass. The memory made him sick. It had been 5 years ago at a place called Rosewood Diner, the kind of restaurant where the coffee never stayed hot and the dreams died slowly over weak tea. Marcus was there that evening with his business partner, Victoria, celebrating a deal that would make them wealthy beyond measure, a commercial for an insurance company, nothing more. But in their world, it meant everything. Money meant power. Power meant status. And status meant they could finally laugh at people who didn't have it. Marcus remembered that night with the clarity of shame. He was dressed in his best designer suit, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Victoria wore diamonds that caught the light like tiny captured stars. They were loud, intentionally so, wanting everyone in that modest diner to witness their success. When Sarah, though he wouldn't learn her name until much later, had approached their table with her order pad, Marcus saw something in her eyes that he mistook for envy. He was wrong about so many things. Sarah was a 28-year-old, single mother working toward a degree in social work. She wasn't envious of Marcus and Victoria's wealth. She was exhausted from carrying her own world on her shoulders. Her daughter Emma was in the 3rd grade. Her mother, who'd helped her escape an abusive marriage, was battling early-stage dementia. Sarah worked at Rosewood from 4 p.m. to midnight, then attended community college from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., sleeping only when her body finally surrendered to its need for rest. But Marcus didn't see any of that. He only saw a target. "You speak Portuguese?" he'd asked when Sarah took their order, reading her name tag with theatrical interest. She'd nodded politely, already sensing something cruel in his smile. "Excellent. Listen to this." He then began reading something from his phone in garbled, intentionally absurd Portuguese, nonsense he'd pulled from an online translator, mispronouncing every syllable, his accent offensive and deliberate. "Translate that, and you could be a director," he'd laughed. Loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Or at least a better waitress. Victoria had joined in, her laughter sharper than knives. Other customers had looked away, uncomfortable. Only Sarah had remained still, her order pad pressed against her chest like armor. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Sarah had said quietly, and something about her grace, the complete absence of defensive anger, had somehow made it worse. It meant she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. It meant she was above them, and they both knew it. 5 years passed. Marcus and Victoria's wealth multiplied. The insurance commercial became a series of commercials, which became a film deal, which became something larger. They became people whom other people wanted to know. They summoned others to their table instead of sitting at theirs. But somewhere inside Marcus, in a place he couldn't quite locate, something hollowed out. He began having dreams where Sarah's eyes looked at him with an expression he couldn't decode. He stopped laughing as readily. He found himself alone in his expensive apartment, surrounded by expensive things that felt like prisons. Then came the package. There was no return address, only his name written in careful, deliberate handwriting. Inside was a photograph, a real photograph, developed and printed, not digital, of Sarah at her college graduation. She was holding a diploma, her cap tilted slightly, genuine joy radiating from her face. There was also a letter, and when Marcus read it, his hands shook so badly he could barely hold the paper. "Dear Mr. Chen," it began, "you probably don't remember me, but I never forgot you. That night at Rosewood changed my life, but not the way you intended. Your mockery reminded me why I was working so hard. It crystallized something inside me. I decided that night that I would become someone who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. I completed my degree. I've been working as a social worker for the past 3 years. Last month, I helped a woman escape the same abusive situation I escaped. The month before that, I supported a family through their homelessness. I started volunteering at a shelter where we work with children. I did all this because of that moment with you. because I chose to let your cruelty be my compass, pointing me toward who I refuse to become. I'm not angry anymore, but I wanted you to know that kindness costs nothing, and cruelty costs everything. I hope you find your way to the light. I truly do, because the loneliest place in the world is a heart that has forgotten how to be human. It was signed simply, Sarah. Marcus had wept that day as he had never wept before. He wept for the years he'd spent building a castle of accomplishment while neglecting the foundation of character. He wept for Sarah, who had transformed pain into purpose, who had chosen grace over revenge. He wept for Emma and for Sarah's mother, and for all the people Sarah had helped while he'd been constructing his empire of nothing. The photograph still sits on his desk. He's had it professionally framed, and he looks at it every single day. He's reached out to Sarah, not with apologies, though he offered those, but with genuine interest in her work. He's donated quietly to her shelter. He's found himself wanting to become the kind of person who builds others up, not tears them down. What Marcus learned that year, in the quiet aftermath of his own moral reckoning, was that success without kindness is just beautiful emptiness, that the measure of a person isn't what they accumulate, but what they contribute, that a waitress at a modest diner had done more to change the world than he ever had with all his wealth and status. That true power isn't the ability to mock someone from behind, designer clothes and diamonds. It's the ability to transform your own pain into someone else's salvation. He was never a director, not really. Sarah had never become one either. But she had directed her own life toward light, and in doing so, she'd unknowingly directed him toward the person he'd always wanted to become. Sometimes, the most profound translations happen not through words, but through the simple, unstoppable language of human kindness.